As you're about to tell from my awesome scrolling skills, there are a lot, and I mean a lot of hats you can collect throughout the Skylanders franchise, 266 of them in fact, and I'm using Superchargers for this top 10 right now, since Superchargers has every single hat for the franchise available except for one that I cannot seem to unlock, apparently. Um, that and also a few bonus ones that were newly introduced in this game, and of course Imaginators didn't carry on the hat tradition, which was a massive disappointment in my personal opinion, because you could wear one of these hats and make your Scarda look a whole lot more goofy due to just some terrible matches, so that added some more comedic value to the game and just improved the interactivity tenfold. So I really enjoy putting these hats on my Scardas and making them look like absolute idiots. It's quite entertaining to say the least. Remember when I said scroll and skill earlier, what I meant was a lack thereof, but regardless, as an added incentive to place hats on Skylanders, there's also stat bonuses. So, you know, if goofy comedic effect isn't enough for you, then the stat bonus most certainly is enough to convince you to put on a hat otherwise. So yes, naturally some hats are cooler than others, and that's exactly what this top 10 is going to be counting down, and boy was it hard to narrow down the coolest hat of over 266 of them. That's exactly what this list is celebrating, the top 10 coolest hats in the Skylanders franchise. Without further ado, we're going to finish this scroll and get right into it. Kicking us off are two honourable mentions. Now I will admit that this is a video I have done in the past, and since then I have adjusted the list and improved the visuals within the edit. So naturally these hats, despite being on the original list, have since hit the cutting room floor, because whilst the Tropical Turban and Cowboy Hat are some incredible hats, they're not merely as cool as the 10 to come. Now the reason why I like these hats so much, and the reasons why they were on that original list of mine, is because the Tropical Turban has so many colours and it's literally a fruit utopia, and I love fruit, so getting to see it expressed in such an aesthetically pleasing way for a hat for a Scarda to wear and goof off with is incredible to me, and it's just such a sheer amount of detail that has been put into it. Even the fact that it's a turban just makes it look more unique, and that gives it some interesting texturing on top of it all. So overall, that's definitely a cool looking hat, especially when it comes down to the aesthetics. And the cowboy hat is also a very aesthetically pleasing hat, that, and also it does blend very well with the Skylanders genre, because of course there's a lot of desert themed levels throughout Skylanders, and cowboys, well, they lived during the Wild West when the land was a lot more, well, deserted. But all puns aside, just makes the Skylander look like a boss and adds that intimidation factor, because it looks like they're kind of the boss of a situation here, and that they can handle themselves in the same vein a cowboy would in a duel. So overall, it just adds a lot more personality to the character, and it lets the character look cool while doing it. So still, whilst these two hats aren't on the list anymore, they are still pretty cool hats, which is why they browned up here in the honourable mention slot. So starting us off at number 10, we have the Mags hat. Now first of all, the fact that Deja Vu's ponytails kind of phase through Mags hat just adds a lot to her texture and her personality as a character. It makes the model quite incredible, and because it just adds so much to not only Deja Vu's model, but any model that the hat is placed upon automatically makes it cool. And on top of that, it's so detailed, like seriously look at how it winds and it curves, and it's some excellent intertextuality as well, because this is Mag's hat, the one she wears. So not only do you have that personality drivenness behind it, the same as what Mags possesses, but you also have that feeling of inventiveness and creativity. You know, this truly looks like an inventor's hat, especially with a little glass at the front of it, and that's because Mags is known for inventing skills, so her powers kind of like seep through into the scar when wearing this, is what I'm trying to say here. And on top of that, it just looks so cool. It's great intertextuality. It truly feels included and part of the Skylines universe, which is very important for any of the hats on these lists to not only look aesthetically pleasing but feel fitting in the Skylines world. And this hat nails both of those, making it an easy number 10 on the list. The only reason why it's not much lower is because it's not the most original hat, and the more original hats have even cooler designs than this one, hence why this is number 10 on the list right here. I'm a huge fan of both film and retro media, so naturally a hat which combines both of these two strong passions of mine is so cool in my eyes, because we have an old-time movie hat which of course looks like a retro film projector, and it even has the light to add to that detailing, and of course the moving parts of the film actually maneuvering in the background of the hat right there. It looks really cool. It celebrates two of my most favorite mediums out there, and so overall, because this hat is personal to me, and it's of course tailored towards my greatest passions, it just makes me so happy that this hat exists in the Skylanders. You know, gives me hope that they have, of course, films of their own. Makes me kind of want to watch them, to be honest. Films set in the Skylanders universe that are not made by humans, you know, films of their own world is what I'm trying to say here. But regardless, it's just such a detailed, cool looking hat, which is why it's coming in at number 9. I love food, and when it comes to food, there are a few foods that can surpass fruit in terms of their deliciousness, and that's why the tropical turban did so well as to get an honourable mention here on the list. But bacon exists, and that just so happens to be one of those few foods which surpasses fruit by miles, because man, bacon is delicious. And you know what else is delicious? Bandanas. No, not really, but bandanas most certainly look awesome. So what happens when you combine a hat that looks good with some food that tastes delicious? Well, you get the bandana, of course. And the cross between these two things is really creative. The texture and the attention to detail here is phenomenal. That bacon looks crispy, and I like the fact how they have different lines distinguishing from how it would be fried and all that. So the fact that the bandana actually looks like it's made out of bacon, thanks to the detailed texture, and it's ultimately what makes this hat so aesthetically pleasing. And the fact that it swirls and curves over again, that's a nice aesthetic to make the hat look polished and extremely delectable. You know, by merely looking at it, it has made me crave bacon, and only the greatest of hats can make me crave something physically. And so naturally, due to all of those factors in combination with one another, it makes a bacon bandana one awesome hat that's worthy of being number 8 on the list right here. Before we even get into number 7 on the list right here, I first have one major question for Fling Kong. Are you alright? Holy crap, you are literally wearing a saw blade for a hat. Now what I love about this is that, similar in vein to the cowboy hat, it really does increase the intimidation factor for Skylander. Like seriously, how much damage do enemies think that they can deal to you when you already have a literal saw blade sitting right on top of your head? That is some major pain tolerance, and on top of that is well detailed too. You truly get the sense of sharpness and danger when looking at this hat, just because the blades look so sharp, so edge-like, so to say, which is what brings about that sharpness, and of course metallic as well. They have a nice shine to them, and the actual hat itself is very well detailed with nice gold plating to contrast the red colours to make it very aesthetically pleasing as well. So overall, this hat has great texture and to really increase its intimidation, as it's a literal saw blade on your head. How creative and awesome is that? Coming in at number 6 is going to be for Sombrero. Now what I love about the Sombrero, first of all, is its contrast in colours. You have the red, the blue and the yellow, each with sharp contrast to make this very visually pleasing hat, and that alone makes it cool. But second of all, it's a cool reflection of Mexican culture, so naturally that inclusion feels relatable and realistic, based upon the real world and our perceptions of it. So it just creates that extra level of immersion with the Sky that you're playing as you can relate to them and, you know, enjoy the expression of this culture, and above all, it's just so accurate and everything. This hat was so glorious that he even imprinted it into Fiesta's design, mind you, with alternate colours, of course, to match the rest of his design. Because yes, sombreros are really cool looking hats. They're really well shaped too, with of course the nice little hump in the middle of the hat, and the rest of it just kind of like smooth and round towards the edges. It looks cool, it's well textured, it has contrast and colours to really stand out on a visual level, so it most certainly is a cool hat and a cool reflection of Mexico, or Mexican culture to be more specific even. And man, I don't think I could have said cool any more times in that sentence had I even tried. For those of you who dislike Prison Break, then you have an even greater reason to love this hat presented before you, because it covers off his face for the most part, with the hat being so large and so detailed. The Volcano Hat has such an accurate detail and texture into it that it truly feels like actual land and fire and a huge massive rock mountain in the form of a volcano on top of your head, which again adds that intimidation factor, because if you have literal lava on your head, how much damage could the enemies possibly do? So overall, it's a detailed hat. It looks really cool. I like the aesthetics too. The palm tree just kind of sprouting out from the volcano really adds to the dimensions of the hat and makes it look awesome. And I also love the fact that the hat is so big that the tree just kind of phases out of the rendering distance as I spin Prison Break around right here. So yes, I love the detail here, I love the realistic looking lava and the intimidation the hat brings about, and it just looks aesthetically cool thanks to the sharp contrasts and colours, giving this hat number 5 on the list right here. Coming in at number 4 here is going to be this Ridic Headband. Now what I love about the Ridic Headband is that it just kind of like levitates over your head and it's spiraling round it, despite the fact that of course it's invisible, so it just has that illusion of levitation, which is so damn cool. And above all, with the fact that it's purple even and quite bright. I have no idea what I was about to say yellow, but still, yellow is a light core colour, and so the brightness of a light core and the brightness within the colour palette of that Ridic Headband makes this a perfect combination to showcase. It looks excellent on legendary Skylanders thanks to those real sharp bright colours. And I just love the Ridic Headband not only for its invisibility and of course its levitative illusions, but also the fact that it's intertextual as always. It really feels fitting for the Skylanders universe and unique to this universe, since of course it possesses the symbols that can be found on the very first portal of power back from Spyro's adventure. That sheer amount of detail and creativity put into the hat makes it worthy of being just shy of the top 3 on the list right here. But kicking off our top 3 coolest Skylanders hats, however, is going to be for Whirlwind Diadem, I believe it's called. Now, whilst it's static, this hat has a huge amount of detail to it. Like, seriously, look at the texturing on that model. There are little gaps to show, of course, where the air particles have been all spread out, because that's how air particles work. And so, naturally, it already has that realism, and the way how it spirals round looks so cool right from the get-go. So we already have really cool aesthetics and a really unique shape to the hat that distinguishes it from others. But as soon as I back out of the menu here, we will see that this hat actually has some movement to it. It bobs up and down in a rather tornado type fashion, which of course Tornado himself is a tornado, so it's like tornadoception. So for this character it's extra cool, but to have a hat that moves like this with such unique texturing and detail is ultimately what makes this hat so distinguishable and so damn cool to look at. How can you not be mesmerized by the current movement of this hat as it bobs back and forth? I love it for one. But coming in at number 2 is the Sherba hat. Now again, I love the shaping of this hat, similar to that of the Sombrero, with the fact that it kind of loops in over itself after the top hump is said and done with, and the sharp contrast and colours just add such detail to make this a visually striking hat. And above all, not only those colours very contrasting, but they also bring about the details of the artwork, which looks rather Chinese inspired. So again, it has that realistic flair from the culture that it's representing. So this hat looks cool in terms of its shape. It has some incredible colours to make it visually striking. What's not to like? I for one think it's a really cool hat, and I would be honoured to put this on the head of any one of my Skylanders, let alone my favourite character, Legendary Igniter, right here. But coming in at number 1 without a shadow of a doubt is going to be the miniature Skylines hat. This has it all. It has a signpost, sunflowers, rocks, a massive hot air balloon, a windmill type thing, and a traditional looking Skylanders hut that all remind me of Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. Its aesthetics and details are also slightly worse than the norm when it comes to these hats, to tailor it towards that nostalgia, so to say, because Spyro's Adventure and Giants had this form of aesthetic to them, unlike the more modern hats that we find in comparison to this. So this represents everything that the Skylanders franchise stands for, and it has just such a nostalgic grip from the look coming directly from Spyro's Adventure and the iconography of that game. So it's ultimately the intertextuality of the hat and the amount of detail that was rammed into it to be the ultimate representative of everything we love about this franchise that makes it by far the coolest hat. A hat in which has the amount of detail poured into it that 3 hats normally possess, and yet they manage to pull it off and make it work. It reminds me of Series 2 Prison Break, or more specifically his figurine, how they were able to cram so much into one space. They did not waste any room in the making of this model, and it just has such a admirable sense of detail to it. And again, of course it feels included as for Skylanders World, because this is literally a miniature version of Skylines, a miniature replica, I'd go as far to say, because it just has that realism to it in the context of the world which the hat is representing, that is. So naturally, this hat, without a shadow of a doubt, comes in at number 1. And I like for you how I use shadow, because Enigma's rather shady and a mysterious figure, to say the least. But regardless, this video is going to be coming to an end. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out today's top 10, and I will see you soon enough for another one. But until that moment arises, peace.